there's a lot to go into that. So I don't buy the Denobulans as genocidal warrior culture.
Sure.
And that's a very minor point, but it's interesting to me because every Denobulan we've seen to this point, including Phlox and his wife, have kind of acted like Phlox and his wife. And so when they were getting to the miners, I was like, oh, maybe like I understand I can't hold it against this show because one episode before they showed Mrs. Phlox and she's exactly like Phlox. So maybe I'll give the writers a break and just say that it's just those two that are kind of like this. But let's see what the miners are like. And I thought when they'd find the miners, they'd be like genocidal, sort of angry people. And instead they're kind of, I wouldn't say they're buffoons, but they're very unserious, like Phlox is and his wife are kind of in a way. Like they're kind of goofy. So that was one point against me. I spent the entire episode going, I don't buy that the Denobulans are seen as this kind of like horrible race to other people. And the second thing is it's harder to define, but I didn't feel like there was a core to the story where I really bit into what was going on. And I wondered if it was just because I was having trouble with the Denobulans, but I think if you replace these guys with a Bajoran and a Cardassian, I still don't think the story improves, even though I know the background to what's going on between their conflict. And I buy the Bajoran and Cardassian thing because it's established. This just felt like it was missing something. It felt trite in a lot of ways.
Yeah, they kind of it kind of is in that Enterprise vein of when they find an interesting story, they just kind of never really get it off the ground. I actually thought I was engaged by it mainly because I thought it was for Enterprise, it was more engaging of a story than I was expecting.
Yeah.
Generally they don't hook me as quickly as this one did. Even the cold open I thought worked fairly well, given the way that Phlox kind of responds to the message that sends. I don't even remember what it really was, but I remember thinking like, oh, okay, well that at least kind of gives you a little bit of a hook to stick around instead of just watching Mayweather read a book or something. But it's it does feel like it's missing a second act in that story where they really kind of ratchet the tension up and really kind of get into the issues. I liked I do also find it tough to believe the Denobulans in the way that you're talking about, because it's like everybody seems so kind and slight in the way that Phlox and his wife do. Yeah. And their ethos seems to be based on Phlox and his wife just about like having a good time and banging. Yep.
The scientists too. The scientists are weirdly obsessed with just getting their rocks back. Not their rocks off, but getting the rocks back up to the surface. Like they, like it's, I really was expecting the scientists to be different from Phlox, because I thought it was the only way to save this idea that that Phlox and his family are really outsiders in Denobulan society, in a way, because we haven't seen the rest of their society, and they don't do it. They're just kind of, I don't know if they're trying to play that storyline for comedy or something, but they're really just obsessed with collecting their rocks, and they don't want to leave even if they die, to a point where like they're being illogical about how are they going to send their research back if these guys come in and start shooting everybody? They don't really have a good leg to stand on. So I don't know.
Yeah, and I also like thinking of the Denobulans as they're portrayed as being like secret militant racists. It's like, oh, your grandmother's so cute, but when the topic of Italians come up, she gets a little dark. Yeah. It's that where it's like, I don't know if this is, but at the same time, it's like, well, that stuff does simmer underneath lots of different cultures. They don't have to be military warriors to dislike another culture. Yep.
This is a particularly intense hatred, though. This is not just, I don't like Italians. That it's kind of person to me was
Israel Palestine kind of thing.
Yeah. Even then, I think you have to go back to like Nazis and Jews, like Cardassians. Sure. Like there has to be a real understanding of there was a terrible thing that happened there. Because if it's just like, I don't like Italians, going from I have issues with the way that Italians drive or do something, is different from I don't want an Italian doctor to save my life. Really, like
Right.
it's a big step to get to that point. And I would sort of buy if it was a Cardassian and a Bajoran. I could see a Bajoran refusing Cardassian treatment, for instance, and being like, I don't want any help from your people because of what you did. That makes sense to me because of what they established. But at the same time, if that's all it was, and those species were replacing Phlox and this guy in this story, I still don't think there's a lot there because it's so surface level of like, I can help you. He goes, no, I don't like you. He goes, oh, I really wish you would like me so I could help you. Okay, I'll start liking you. And then they do it. And it's not that I even think it's a bad idea. I just think it's not executed well. It's too detached from what I know about Phlox and its people, and it's too detached from any sort of realistic, like, understanding of how a person should act that way. I just thought it was kind of weak, even though I thought it had potential to be good. It just didn't execute on it.